I remember when I invested in Apple in 2009 when the iPhone first came out. And for years, people told me, why are you invested in Apple? Everybody talks about Apple. And obviously, it had an incredible run. We have a good team, and obviously different people for different products. They run the day-to-day. And what I try to work with them on is the big ideas and the risk. I feel investing is a bit of a craft, and I'm proud of that craft. It's risky, and you gotta work really hard for it.
Although he was born in France, Philippe Laffont attributes his success to the American spirit.
In this country, people like the underdog. People like someone who tries something new and entrepreneurial.
Laffont is the founder of Coatue, a roughly $50 billion hedge fund known for its expertise in tech investing.
If I'm in the US and I start a company, I get money from people who are willing to lose it, understand the risk, and I can probably get a term sheet in a matter of weeks. Oh, if I try to raise money in Europe, good luck.
However, investing wasn't the original plan. What he really wanted to do was to be an Apple engineer.
I had 5 job interviews at Apple, and I was 0 for 5.
But all's well that ends well.
I think that being an investor is better because you live vicariously and you meet all these interesting people.
And Laffont isn't slowing down anytime soon, especially with an AI revolution potentially on the horizon.
There's a lot going on with AI. On the new thing, AI is sort of gonna be this amazing sort of artificial brain. What I wonder is what happens when you put that brain inside of a robot, and we humans need to then live side by side with humanoids. I'm like, wow.
In fact, the best might be yet to come.
You mentioned when we were out there that Buffett made 99.5% of his money after 50. I'm 56, so hopefully I stay healthy and I can do this for a while.
For those who may not know, Philippe is native to France, came over to the United States for college. We'll talk about that shortly. But he has built one of the largest hedge funds that focuses on technology-related investments, Coatue, and now managing roughly $50 billion. So tell me, is AI overhyped? Because everybody wants to talk about AI, and do you think this is going to be like a dot-com bust at some point, or is AI really here to stay and the values are not too out of whack?
Yeah, thank you. You promised you would start with an easy question. And we go straight to the heart of the matter. Listen, short run, it's true that the mentions of AI in every TV and written form is very high. And so one could say, wow, if everybody talks about it, it must be priced in. And the only reason why I'm more positive is I remember when I invested in Apple in 2009 when the iPhone first came out. And for years, people told me, why are you invested in Apple? Everybody talks about Apple. And obviously, it had an incredible run. So I actually think that sometimes because someone speaks a lot about something, it might be actually a good sign versus an overhyped sign.
Now, some people on Wall Street say the best way to invest in AI is go invest in the big companies that are already doing AI, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and so forth. Others say go find the smaller companies that might grow into the next NVIDIA. So what is your own view?
I'm conflicted. On one hand, the history of technology seems to be that the big get bigger. But also, sometimes out of nowhere, a new company gets created, like Facebook or TikTok. And at the beginning of these new waves, the new winners, 10 or 20 years out, some of them are existing companies, and some of them are new. But the new ones that get big, there's maybe one a year, no more.
All right, let's suppose I say I missed the AI wave, I wasn't smart enough to get there, but there's another technology wave always coming along. So what's the next technology thing I should invest in if it's not AI? What's coming behind AI that is going to excite tech investors?
Two things. One is if you peel the onion of AI and you think about all the building blocks necessary for AI, you might stumble on real estate with data centers or utilities with power. I find the power is really interesting. So it shows that before I answer the new, there is a sort of an onion effect, and you can peel it. There's a lot going on with AI. On the new thing, AI is sort of going to be this amazing sort of artificial brain. What I wonder is what happens when you put that brain inside of a robot, and we humans need to then live side by side with humanoids. I'm like, wow, I don't know exactly when it happens. Maybe it's 10, 15 years. Musk says it's 5, other people say it's 25. Take the average, 15 years. That's going to be pretty exciting.
Hey, what about quantum computing? People talk about that. Is that something that I should be looking at investing in?
I've made a lot of mistakes, betting on these new technologies like AR, VR turns out to be not so big, 3D printing turns out to be not so big. My estimate is $100 trillion was invested in today's dollar in the PC, CPU-based infrastructure. All this is going to get ripped out to put $100 trillion or more in our GPU-based infrastructure. In that sort of quantum of numbers, I feel that the quantum computing is going to be very small.
Now, hedge fund investors who invest around the globe, and you invest around the globe, but more in the U.S. probably than around the globe, but you always are worried about, I presume, geopolitical events. So are there some geopolitical events you're worried about right now?
Yes, I don't know why, but for some reason I love thinking about black swans, and at the office everybody thinks I'm weird because I'm always thinking about what can go wrong. But underpinning the AI is the chips. And the chips, despite the CHIP Act, which I think was a good idea for the US, I still think like 80% or so of the capex of TSM is in Taiwan. And so at the leading edge, a lot of capacity is in one very small area. Forget that it's just in China, it's in a very small area. I think that's very risky.
NVIDIA, which has now the highest market cap, is it dependent on production in Taiwan, so that if China were to invade Taiwan, would that really adversely affect NVIDIA?
I think it would adversely affect NVIDIA. It would adversely affect the stock markets around the world. It would adversely affect everybody in this room. If this happened, we think this could be obviously a very significant event.
Now let's talk about technology in this sense. France really invented the precursor to the internet. Yet France more or less...
That's what French people like me like to say. I'm not sure it's true, but yes.
All right, but maybe it's true, maybe not. But why is it that the major technologies that everybody here needs to get through the day are all based, they're more or less in America? So Microsoft, Facebook, Apple, Google, Netflix, all these companies are American-based companies. What happened to Europe? Europe has 200 million more people than the United States. Why do we not have any technologies that Europeans developed that we need to use today to get through our life in the United States? What happened to Europe's inventiveness?
Listen, I think there's two reasons. And from my personal experience, I moved to the US when I was 16 and I never came back. I recently also became an American citizen. One thing that I've noticed is some of the best European entrepreneurs, they leave to start their companies in the US. So there's some very famous companies like Snowflake, but they were started actually by 3 French people, but it's an American company. So I think problem number one is the US is such an amazing country that a lot of people decide to start their companies in the US. Problem number two is if I'm in the US and I start a company, I get money from people who are willing to lose it, understand the risk, and I can probably get a term sheet in a matter of weeks. Oh, if I try to raise money in Europe, good luck. And then after that, I'm in one country, and then I need to have a different set of regulation that I need to respect to be in the big 6. And then there's, I don't know, 30 or 40 countries in the European Union, each with their own regulation. I'd rather start my country in the US, start my company in the US, then you move very quickly to Canada, UK, and Australia, and then from the UK, you move to continental Europe. That's what we see.
So everyone in the US seems obsessed with whether the Fed is going to lower interest rates before the election, after the election. Do you have a view on whether the Fed is going to do either of those things?
I have a strong view, but I've never been right with respect to macro events in my life. So I will tell you what my strong view is, and it may be the opposite. My view is that the Fed is going to do what the data tells it should do, irrelevant of the election. Because if you do it before, you're going to favor one candidate, maybe. But then if you do it after, then in fact, you're really favoring maybe another candidate, whether it's the incumbent or the insurgent, I suppose. And so I think that it's going to be whatever the data says. Now, I've always been wrong. I think I've predicted 7 of the last 3 recessions, something like that.
Because of the uncertainty in the economy, let's say right now where interest rates are going, who's the next president going to be, is it a good time to invest? Or would you say now is not a great time, wait till after the presidential election's over?
I always answer the same, because divide your money in thirds, invest a third immediately, keep a third if the stock market goes down 10 or 15%, and use the last third if the market goes down 30%. In this country, people like the underdog. People like someone who tries something new and entrepreneurial.
Let's talk about your background for a moment. So I can tell from your accent and what you've said, you're from France, unless it's a fake accent. That's a real accent, right?
When I was young, there was a time where the accent helped, but now I'm married with 6 kids, so the accent doesn't help anymore.
Okay, all right. So now, when you grew up in France, were your parents technology investors?
No, my father worked for an American company in France, and in 1981, the socialist government won, and they nationalized a bunch of country. And my father said, we're moving to the US. And that was just the simple reason. And I'm so thankful he took that decision.
So what age did you come here?
I was 16.
16, and you go to high school where?
I went to high school in New York at the French Lycée, so my accent obviously never got better. And then I went to college at MIT, and I was hopeful to be a great computer science major, and I turned out to be a very mediocre computer science major, hence why we're here in finance today.
You had an obsession, as I remember it in those days, with Apple. You wanted to go work for Apple, and Apple did not hire you.
Correct.
So had Apple hired you, do you think you would be happier now or less happy?
God, I hate these questions. David always gets to the essence of the problem. I had 5 job interviews at Apple, and I was 0 for 5. So they clearly didn't like what I had to offer. I think that being an investor is better because you live vicariously and you meet all these interesting people. And I think at Apple, you work on a great problem. But hey, you get lucky, you work for the phone, you get unlucky, you work for the car, who knows? As an investor, God, we get to speak to so many people, and at the end of the day, why I invest so much, like to invest so much, is because you have a chance to meet the best minds and to learn.
So how did you get into investing? You went to work for Julian Robertson at Tiger. How did you get a job there out of MIT? Did you do something before Julian Robertson?
So once Apple told me to take a hike, I actually did take a hike, and I went to live in Chile for 6 months, and I became a very good fisherman, and I still have that skill, and I learned how to speak Spanish, so I decided, well, I'm gonna drown my sorrows, and I lived in Spain and worked for McKinsey in Spain, having that base in Spanish. And when I was at McKinsey, I saw all these famous CEO comes, and the McKinsey partners were so differential to them, and me, I was always getting the coffee for everyone, so I was like, okay, that was like note to self. And then it was very lucky because I was at McKinsey during the boom of the PC, and it was Dell, Microsoft, and Intel. And if you had invested in each of these stocks, you would have been a genius. Of course, it was pure luck. But I invested in those 3 stocks, and I made more money investing in the stocks than McKinsey. And then I was like, I'm done. I'm going to become an investor.
Right.
That's
how did you hear of Julian Robertson, or how did he hear of you?
So I interviewed for Julian, and I sent my resume, and I got a note from the IT department of Tiger saying we don't need any more IT support staff. We noticed you have a background from MIT, but we don't need you. So I was like, damn, what can I do? And so I worked for free for a little mutual fund, but I learned just enough of the lingo that then after about 6 months, actually a French friend got me just to meet Julian for a few minutes. But that free job was the best thing I ever did because I learned just the basics, a P multiple, revenue, cost, profits, just enough to squeeze through the door, and that's how I ended up.
So you presumably did reasonably well there. And then when Julian Robertson closed his organization, he gave money to a number of his acolytes, and they called Tiger Cubs, I guess. And were you a Tiger Cub?
I'm still a proud Tiger Cub. Unfortunately, when I left, he wasn't still giving money to people. And so I had to go and raise my own money, and I asked my friends and family first for some money. And most of my friends and family either had no money or didn't trust that I was going to be a good steward of their capital. So I didn't raise any money from them. But America is a special place, and I met a lot of people, and some of them, they meet you for 15 minutes, and they're like, hey, I'm done, meeting's over, and then the next day you get a check from them.
Wow.
To invest, and I started with $50 million.
Wow.
January 1st, 2000. That was brilliant timing in retrospect.
So the people that gave you initial money, were they professional investors or people that you happened to meet on social occasions? Who are these people? And
they were professional investors, and I had a prime broker who introduced me to these people. Some of them said no, but in this country, people like the underdog. People like someone who tries something new and entrepreneurial, and surprisingly, I was able to round up a few $million.
So did you ever tell the people that did not invest with you what a mistake they made?
I feel that vengeance is best served at times by not saying anything.
Okay.
So,
all right, so you started with $50 million. What year was that?
That was basically January 1st, 2000.
January 1st, 2000, and now you're managing roughly $50 billion.
Yes.
So that's a pretty good increase.
We've added 3 zeros, but I think the fourth is going to be difficult.
Okay. So today, are you picking the stocks, and you do stocks and credit, and you also do private equity, but not control, but private positions, right?
Yes. We have a good team, and obviously different people for different products. They run the day-to-day, and what I try to work with them on is the big ideas and the risk, and let them sort of think about the individual names.
Now, your firm is named Coatue.
Yeah.
Where did you get that name?
So that name, as you know, is the beach opposite your house in Nantucket. And even before I came to the US, I would summer in Nantucket, and I started summering there from France in 1977. But imagine I was 10 years old, and I arrived to the US, and I go to one of these movie theaters with popcorns and whatever, Dr. Pepper and stuff. And the first 2 movies I saw were Star Wars and Jaws. And to this day, I'm like, this is why I love this country so much. When you see Star Wars as a 10-year-old in a foreign country, that's it. I wake up every morning and I feel this both fiduciary duty and this curiosity and meeting new investors, and it's just really exciting.
You're managing roughly $50 billion, and is your goal to keep growing this, and is it to keep doing what you're doing? The U.S. government might come to you and say, we need you to become in the U.S. government as Secretary of Treasury. You're now an American citizen. Or is this what you want to do for the next 10, 15 years of your life?
I can say with full certainty that I'm neither qualified nor hoping to work in the Treasury. Mostly, I would be completely unqualified. I'm impatient. I change my mind all the time. So those are a couple things that might be good for investing. And I love what I do. I feel investing is a bit of a craft, and I'm proud of that craft. It's risky, and you got to work really hard for it. And I just get this fire in my belly. I can't explain it why, but I wake up every morning and I feel this both fiduciary duty and this curiosity and meeting new investors. And it's just really exciting to try to see. You mentioned when we were out there that Buffett made 99.5% of his money after 50. I'm 56, so hopefully I stay healthy and I can do this for a while.
So what's the biggest investment mistake you've made?
By far, the biggest mistakes that I've made is selling stock early. And as an example, we made a big investment in Tencent in 2003. And having sold that position early cost our fund $20 billion.
What do you do with your money? Are you a collector of art? Are you a collector of wine? I assume you're French and care about wine. Or are you a philanthropist? What do you do with your money, or are you just saving it all?
I think someday, and I should probably do it sooner rather than later, you have a responsibility to take that capital and help others. So far, I've been a little bit, to be honest, it's been a lot for me just working and having the family life and stuff and not being too much in the limelight. And that's been my main focus. And I know I need to do something grander and bigger and more altruistic. And I haven't quite done it yet, but it's something I need to do.
Somebody's watching this. He's a young person who says, I want to be like Philippe. I want to be a professional investor in the hedge fund world. What is the best advice? Is it to get a good college degree, go to Spain for a while, go to Chile? What is your advice?
I think that my career involved a road that had a little bit too many left and rights along the way. And in fact, a couple times I had difficulties early on in my career. And I remember once I told someone, if you give me 5% of your business, I'll shut down mine and just come work for you. And he said, I'm really sorry, but I can only afford to give you 3. And I was like, oh, 3 just doesn't sound enough. All right, let me give it 1 more year. Thank God the guy, he quit 1 year after that. So my advice is, obviously, when you go to a good school, the advantage is you meet interesting people. But there are a lot of good schools. There are not just 5 good schools. Number 2, as you learn the basics of finance, the mathematical basics of finance, keep an open mind, network, and have some fun hobbies. That's my advice.
We're getting ready for 4th of July soon. Why did you decide to become an American citizen? You're doing okay without being an American citizen. What propelled you to want to become an American citizen at this point in your life?
Yeah. Well, my kids are American and stuff. I just felt that this country had done a lot for us, and I don't mind paying my taxes here. I've only paid my taxes here. The U.S. is a worldwide income tax anyway, so it wasn't going to change. And I've spent 40 of my 56 years here. I didn't mention, but I do have a lot of wine. It's not necessarily the best wine, but I do enjoy an occasional glass of wine. So I've kept a few things from France. But I became American because at the end of the day, I love this country. I love what it stands for. I love that it's not just about working hard and if you work hard, you have a chance. Everybody knows that about the U.S. To me, what I like about the U.S. is also what we stand and how we try to help the rest of the world. And some people don't like what we do, but I think by and large, thank God that there's a country like us. I even like the Tom Brady roast that so many people were offended by. And I just think the concept of a roast, and that when you become a really famous and incredible celebrity in the US, you still have to subject yourself to sort of rules and jokes, and that you're just a normal person. I really love everything about this country.